Today on the show, I'm happy to have Josh Koehler. He's the founder of SR Solar New Hampshire. They are a solar energy sales and installation company. And we were just talking about the learning curve and getting this business built and learning about energy.
When you go into a certain industry, maybe that you're not familiar, right, with the talk or the talk tracks or what people do, or maybe sometimes what the pivotal things are, right? That gets a customer or somebody be like, "Oh, yeah, that's it. That's what I want." So that's a learning curve because you got to understand it all. You got to start from the ground up, and nobody's going to hold your hand, and nobody's just going to say, "Here you go." So you got to learn it. You got to find it. You got to search. You got to call. You got to have anybody you know and anybody you know help you in it. And so the learning curve there was really, I came from an automotive background for almost 22 years. And in my automotive background, I started as a child, a 18-year-old kid selling cars, and then worked into finance. And by the time I was in my mid 20s, at 26, I was a general sales manager of a top 150 dealer group in the country. And then I stayed with auto and went to indirect lending and became a director in a $10 billion company when I was in my early 30s, one of the youngest. So all that I went through, and there's a lot of those processes and procedures that you take in auto, and you understand the customer, what they're about, how they think, how they buy, and you understand that. So transitioning the customer thought process was easy. The hard part is understanding now, what am I selling, right? I can understand the customer. I can understand how they think and how they buy. I got to understand my product. So that's the learning curve. And so it was everything. Like I said, anybody and anything you can think of. So as I had the idea and what we were thinking about transitioning into and getting out of what we had done for 20 plus years, it became to, okay, who do I know? My barber, believe it or not, happened to be very good friends with a solar company, and not necessarily sales and installation, but the installing side. So I just asked him, tell me about it. How's that all work? And he told me a lot. And I said, that's awesome. I said, do you have that guy's contact number? Would you mind if I called him? Am I good enough for you that you like me enough that it's okay that I say, hey, I'm calling because X referred me? And he said, 100%, go ahead. Wonderful. So when you get an opportunity like that, I think anybody, if you're thinking outside the box and you're thinking about, what can I do here? That's an opportunity. Go, and I am going to ask every question I can think of, right? Because now I got somebody that knows. So once you do that, you just ask anything you can think of. So first questions I started asking as, tell me how it works. Why is this so cool? Why do you like it? What do you think the benefits are? What do you think the advantages are? What do you think the hiccups are? What do you think people don't understand? So it's asking questions, right? And that's in any sales. So now you've got a source. So I asked them all those questions and basically told me everything and talked to me for 2 hours. And I said, wonderful. I said, and he gave me people. I said, who do I need to call? He said, this person and this person. I said, thank you very much. I said, is it okay if I call them and say, you told me to call now? And he said, by all means. Wonderful. And that's what we did. So I took those people I called, who are the installation people who I talked to already. Give me another one to talk to. I talked with them and tell me who my distribution and my supply is, because I need to get a hold of them. Did that. So then I've got my installation, I've got my distribution and supply. And then from that point, once I understand how to do it, where to get it, now that's easy. Now it's just setting up the business end, right? So now I understand a product. I understand how to position it. I understand how to sell it. Now I need to collect money from a customer, right? So now that I got that, now it's on to the other part of it. So I've got to get your business up and running, right? I got to be able to collect payments from people. I got to be able to do all that. So that learning curve is that in the beginning, right? You got to start from ground up, and no one's going to do it for you. So it's just, you got to pick ears and people and ask that it's okay if they like you enough, and then take that initial. And when you talk to that first person, make sure that you're doing everything you can to represent yourself in the best light you can. And if you do that right, then the next door opens to the next people. So yeah, I hopefully that answers your question about learning curves. There's a lot in there that you have to understand. And you come from an auto end, which is very simple, right? Here's the feature of the car and here's the benefit and why you would like that. And auto is pretty self-explanatory over terms. There's a lot of things to learn, but it goes in a premise. But now when you were talking about energy, you start talking about kilowatts and kilowatt hours, and they're not the same thing. And how does one relate to the other? That's tough. And that learning curve is, you got to pick everybody's brain you can imagine, watch as many videos as you can, and start to really understand how it works. And once you can do that, and from that point, there's programs and things you can get into that will help you and all, but there's a lot of self-starting, I would say, on that end to really understand it. Because the one thing about the solar industry and different things is nobody wants to tell you anything. And the reason they don't want to tell you anything is because it wants to be a mystery, because if people can figure it out, then they understand what it is. And if people understand what it is, then the allure isn't so much there, right? Which is what I found in this industry. It's a very little different in the way that it works. So it's nobody's going to tell you anything. You got to go find it for yourself.
So that self-starting mentality, that been something you've always had, or is that developed more over time?
It's a great question. I always like to say, so we were in to answer that question. It goes back to an example. And I think the best example I've heard in my life in this end is you can't put it in them. And what that means, it's always been the same analogy you would say that you can't lead, you can at least lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? And it's that same thought process. So I always believe it's in you, right? To begin with, right? You're that outgoing person. You're that person that likes to talk to everybody. You're the one going out. And in a supermarket, you don't mind asking a lady next to you if she likes that brand of yogurt better than the other one and why, because that's just who you are. So when you understand that's who you are, it becomes easier. So I think it's to answer your question. Yeah, I think everyone has that in them that to some degree. And once you understand that you have that, it's not a bad, bring it to light, do something with it.
It's practice.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm not naturally a guy who should be running a podcast, but you
Yeah,
train that skill set and then it becomes natural to you.
it's fair. Anything, right? In life, man, I think it's, you do that, you understand the skill set, you train on it. And I don't think sometimes people give themselves enough credit to understand that God gave you a brain. Use it. You can do stuff with it.
Yeah, there's a quote from Steve Jobs: once you realize you're just as smart as everybody else is when you can truly be successful.
There you go.
So did you end up focusing on the residential or commercial side of solar?
Residential, right to resi. And the reason that you go to residential is it's an easier walk in. And why I say it's an easier walk in is it's not as complicated. When you get into commercial ends, right, you're talking about things that most people aren't thinking. It's three phases. It's three phase versus single phase coming in lines. And it's, do I have a 240 volt coming into two boost bars, or do I have a three phase and I got three boost bars and this one is 240 and these are 440? And it's a different thought process. So the easier thought process transition to is right to residential, right? Everyone's single phase, 240 volts are coming right from that line in the back of the panel when you understand what you're doing. And that's an easier concept to walk into than it is on the other end. So yes, residential all day.
So did you start by going knocking on doors?
No, that's funny. I'm not much of it. So last time I think I knocked on doors and that I was a kid and it was for a walkathon when I was in grade school, and we would knock on doors, and it was going back like 30 some odd years ago. And then you would you knock on doors and you ask for donations, right? I think that's the last time I did knocking on doors. What I did was I used what I learned over years, right? I understood inside dealerships I'm running through that in order to do things, we weren't knocking on people's doors, right, to buy cars. You marketed. And how did you market? You were smart about how you marketed. You picked certain hours of the day, you picked certain locations, you did all this. So for me, having that benefit of that background, having the benefit of understanding what SEO and SEM is, understanding my companies I can use, marketing companies, understanding how to build a website, looking at Google ads, when to run them, when not to run them, taking the back end of, I can use Facebook, I can do this, I can do that. That's just, I was in that for so long. So to me, I never thought about the door knocking. I did actually real quick. I mentioned to my wife, you know what, maybe I'll go out and knock doors. And she said, you know where we're at, right? We're in New Hampshire. You're not knocking on doors. And we're from Philly originally. And back down that area, yeah, I'll go knock on doors, people's neighborhoods. That's fine. But New Hampshire's a different animal. It's, people do not like that. They do not want that. So I used everything I learned over the years in that, and I marketed online. So we built our site very simply, went out. My wife actually did a great job with it, put our stuff together, did it. And then I just started marketing it. So I started right on Facebook, seeing what other companies were doing out there that did that, and said, okay, they do this. So here's how I'm going to do it different. And this is why I'm going to do it different. And I just marketed more towards customer service than anything, more towards the customer and what we can do for them, how we're going to take care of them. And the ads that I built out on Google Ads and smart campaigns and things of that nature were more about, hey, this is a system and it's customer service and it's backed by X. Not so much about money, because price wasn't it. It was more about value. So did that. So no, I didn't knock on doors. I did it generically and I built it through that. And over time, and it takes a little bit to get going. But once you start getting it out there, I did that. And then I also went to like vendor shows. So in this area, there's vendor shows they'll go on just like anywhere in the country. They might be at a motorcycle dealership or they could be at a church for a craft fair. They could be anywhere. And it was getting involved in that. So yeah, one of the first things we did was putting up a tent with a table and a sample of the panel and what a microinverter looks like and getting a banner made on Vista Print and putting it together and just sitting out there and making business cards and everything off of Canva or whatever and just getting it going. So it was really, I guess you would say it was grassroots from the ground up, man. It was vendor shows and marketing online and answering the phone.
What would your advice be to somebody who's thinking about starting their first business?
It's not as complicated as that's it, right? I think people tend to believe or think that things are more complicated than they are. At the end of the day, starting your first business, just think about it, right? You have an idea. Here's what I want to do. So I want the customer to buy this from me, right? Let's say you're a sales company. That's what you're doing. I want the customer to buy this. Great. I can sell it to them. They can buy it. How are they going to pay me? All right. I got to have an account to pay it to. And I got to have a company they can pay it to, right? Easy, right? It's not that complicated. So if you think about it, there's many things out there that can help you with that. You could do a legal Zoom, or you could just go right to your Secretary of State, form an LLC. Maybe you're not sure what product it is. Become a consultant company. That's the easiest thing. Register yourself as a consulting company. There's your LLC started. Then get yourself a bank account. Register right to the LLC. You can use numerous different types of banks that are online. There's tons of things out there. Get yourself a bank account set up. They're the two basic things you need, right? I need this and I need this. Then if it's something that, let's say I need a contract on or a purchase order is easy. You can Google a purchase order, get a generic one, you're done. Contract, same thing. You can go to Rocket Lawyer. You can go a lot of things out there and pull generic contracts to start yourself. And that's really it, right? It's not as complicated, I think, as it seemed to made out to be when it's not. It's a basic understanding. I have a product. You want to buy it. How is that going to happen? I got to have a company. I got to have a bank account. I got to have a contract. That's it. All the other stuff that comes with it, that can wait because you're not even there yet. Your first product, maybe you make a couple grand. Great. Guess what? A couple grand, you're not there yet because you don't need that CPA yet. You don't need that lawyer. You don't need that. The simplest thing to start is it's not as complicated as it's made out to be.
Yeah.
It's really a simple theory. That's it.
Yeah. You have to get into it to know. So Josh, if our listeners wanted to get in touch with you or your company, how could they do so?
Touching me, our company, it's fairly easy. You can just go, we have our website you can go right to, which is srsolarnh.com. So S is in Sam, R is in Raymond, Solar, N is in Nancy, H is in Harry.com. That'll go right to our website. On there, there's contact information, which you can contact us. And the majority of the phone number that you'll see there is right to me. And that's 603-540-4243. That'll go directly to me. Right to the website. Yeah. Right there is personally fine. And then my email and all my information is right there.
Thank you, Josh, for coming on the show. And thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Failing to Success. I'm your host, Chad Kalecki with Cosmic Web Design and Development. Make sure to press that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.